Two people, same job, same paycheck, same discipline. $300 a month, every single month, for 35 years. Both investing in a retirement account. Both earning 7% annually. Both doing exactly what every financial article, every HR presentation, every well-meaning parent told them to do. One of them retires with around $260,000. The other retires with around $440,000. Same money in, same market, same time horizon. $180,000 apart. And here's what should make you pause. The person who ended up with less never made a mistake, never missed a contribution, never panicked in a downturn, never touched the account. The only difference was a fee that was never explained, a fee expressed as a decimal that looks like rounding noise, a fee called an expense ratio, and at 1.5% annually over 35 years, it quietly extracted $180,000 from that person's retirement and redirected it to a fund management company whose name is, right now, somewhere in your paperwork. Look, before we go further, I want to be direct about something. If you've been contributing to a 401k at work, feeling responsible, doing the adult thing, none of this is your fault. You were sold a story about employer matching and tax deferrals, and most of that story is true. What nobody told you is that the same account that works in your favor can also work against you, silently, through a mechanism that is perfectly legal, almost invisible, and built to be misunderstood. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how the fee structure inside most workplace retirement plans actually works. You'll see what it costs in real numbers, not percentages. You'll understand why the funds at the top of your enrollment menu are there, and you'll know 3 specific things you can do about it. My lawyer needs me to say this isn't financial advice. My lawyer also just closed on a lake house. I'll let that sit for a moment. Let's start with the anatomy of how money disappears inside a 401k. When you contribute to your workplace retirement account, your money gets invested into a menu of funds. Mutual funds, target date funds, bond funds that your employer pre-selected. You didn't pick the menu. You picked from the menu. And every single fund on that menu carries something called an expense ratio. An expense ratio is the annual cost of running the fund, expressed as a percentage of your invested assets. It's charged automatically. You never write a check. There's no line item on your statement. No notification arrives. Nothing gets flagged. The fee comes out of your returns before they ever reach you, as silently and automatically as breathing. 1% expense ratio, 7% market return. You receive 6%. Simple. Except here's where it compounds, and I mean that literally. Because the fee doesn't just reduce your return this year, it reduces the base on which every future return is calculated. You're not losing 1% per year in isolation. You're losing the growth on that 1%, and the growth on the growth, and the growth on the growth on the growth. Year after year, for decades. The fee is a silent partner who takes a cut of everything, including every dollar those first cuts would have eventually become. This is why the word small is the most expensive word in retirement planning. Now, in a typical workplace 401k, the expense ratio isn't even the whole picture. There are often 3 separate fee layers running simultaneously. Layer 1, the fund's expense ratio. The cost of the mutual fund itself. This is what most people know about, if they know anything at all. Layer 2, administrative fees charged by the plan administrator, the company your employer hired to run the 401k platform, process contributions, maintain the website you log into twice a year. These fees are often charged as a flat dollar amount per participant or as an additional basis point charge on assets. They exist whether your investments went up or down. They exist whether you contributed this year or didn't. Layer 3. Advisor fees. If your employer uses a financial advisor to help design or oversee the plan, and many do, that advisor may be receiving ongoing compensation from the plan, sometimes transparently disclosed, often buried in a document called a Form 5500, which is publicly available, rarely read, and written in the specific variety of English designed to discourage reading. Each layer looks harmless. Together, they stack. 1.5% to 2% per year, all in, is not unusual in a mid-market employer's 401k. In some smaller company plans, the number is higher. In a handful of well-negotiated large corporate plans, it's lower. But the average American worker is sitting somewhere in the middle of that range right now. And most of them have no idea. And the behavioral trap is elegant. When you see your balance growing, you don't think about what it would look like without the drag. You see a number going up, and that feels like success. The enemy of understanding is a rising balance, because it makes inaction feel like wisdom. Let me introduce you to Michael, 42 years old, software developer at a mid-sized firm outside Chicago, makes $90,000 a year, has been contributing $500 a month to his company's retirement plan for 15 years without interruption. Solid, responsible, consistent. Michael checks his balance every few months. He sees somewhere north of $150,000 and thinks, I'm doing all right. Here is what Michael doesn't know. His plan's all-in fees are running approximately 1.2% per year. That's not unusual. That's actually below average for this type of plan. And at that rate, over 15 years of contributions, Michael has already paid approximately $25,000 in fees. $25,000. Not to the market, not to taxes, not to his own account. To the management layer sitting between Michael and his money. And Michael never signed a contract that said, I agree to pay this company $25,000. He simply picked the fund that appeared at the top of his enrollment screen. Maybe the one that said, Balanced Growth. Maybe the target date fund with 2045 in the name, because he was born in 1983, and that was the match. This isn't carelessness. This is what happens when a 26-page enrollment packet arrives on your desk during the first week of a new job. Someone in HR says, just pick something before Friday, and you do. Here's the part that actually matters. Michael has 23 years until retirement. If he does nothing, changes nothing, reads nothing, moves nothing, that 1.2% drag will compound forward for another 23 years on a growing balance. The total fee extraction over his full career in that plan will likely exceed $150,000, not counting what those dollars would have grown into. Michael isn't a cautionary tale about bad decisions. Michael is a cautionary tale about no decision, about enrollment inertia being treated as strategy. Now let's talk about why those particular funds are at the top of that menu, because this is the part that changes how you read the whole system. I spent years inside this world, and what I can tell you plainly is this. Your employer does not choose the funds in your 401k based on which funds will generate the best outcome for you. They choose based on relationships, contracts, and something the industry calls revenue sharing. Revenue sharing is a legal arrangement in which the fund company pays a portion of its fee revenue back to the plan administrator in exchange for inclusion on the plan's fund menu. The higher the fee on the fund, the more revenue there is to share. The more assets that flow into the fund, the bigger the payment. So there is a direct, structural, financial incentive for plan administrators to include higher-cost funds, to place them prominently, and in many cases, to make them the default enrollment option. Think about that for a moment. The fund you were defaulted into on the day you enrolled may have been chosen in part because it generates a payment from the fund company back to the people running the platform. That payment is not illegal. It is not hidden in the sense that it must be disclosed somewhere. It is hidden in the sense that it is disclosed in a format and location that guarantees almost no one will ever find it. This is not a secret conspiracy. It is disclosed in documents that are technical, densely written, and designed functionally to be unread. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. You were never meant to read the prospectus. You were meant to pick from the menu and feel grateful for the match. Let's make the alternative cost real, because percentages don't land the way dollars do. Consider two funds tracking the same underlying market. One is a low-cost index fund with an expense ratio of 0.05% per year. That exists. The Vanguard Total Market, Fidelity's zero-fee index options, Schwab's institutional class funds. These vehicles are real. They are available in many plans, and their expense ratios are measured in fractions of a basis point. The other is a typical managed fund with a 1.5% all-in cost. That also exists, and it's in a lot of plans right now. On a $300 monthly contribution, 7% annual growth, 35-year time horizon, the index fund investor retires with approximately $435,000. The managed fund investor retires with approximately $255,000. Difference, $180,000. Not because one person took more risk. Not because one person got lucky. Because one person was defaulted into a higher-cost fund at enrollment and never changed it. Now translate that into what compound drag actually means on a single dollar. Every dollar that leaves your account in fees today is a dollar that no longer compounds. Research into long-term investment costs consistently estimates that each dollar lost to fees now represents $4 to $6 of lost terminal value by retirement. On a 35-year horizon, at typical growth rates, closer to 6. So Michael's $25,000 in fees, paid over 15 years, doesn't just represent $25,000 missing from his balance. If those dollars had remained invested and compounded through his retirement date, the lost value is closer to $125,000 at minimum. That's not a rounding error. That's a significant portion of a retirement. And I want to be careful here because I'm not telling you the market is rigged or that you've been robbed. I'm telling you that an invisible cost over a long time, with compounding working against you instead of for you, produces a result that nobody ever wrote on the front page of your enrollment packet. The math doesn't require a villain. It only requires your inattention. And the system is very, very good at encouraging inattention. But here's what I haven't told you yet. And this is where the trap gets deeper for a specific group of people. Everything I just described assumes your only drag is the fund's expense ratio and the plan's administrative layer. There is a category of 401k participants for whom it's worse. Meet Sandra, 51, regional sales manager in the Southeast. Has been with her company for 18 years. Her employer uses a plan that includes an ongoing advisory fee. An advisor who, technically, is there to help employees with retirement planning. Sandra met him once at an all-hands meeting in 2012. He handed her a brochure. She's been paying an advisory fee of 1% per year ever since, on top of fund expenses, on top of administrative costs. Her total plan cost closer to 2.4% annually. If your plan uses a financial advisor who charges an ongoing advisory fee on top of the fund costs, and many plans do, you may be looking at a total cost of 2.5% to 3% per year. Run that number through a 35-year calculation. The gap doesn't double, it more than doubles, because the additional drag compounds the same way the original drag does. We are no longer talking about losing 20 or 30% of your terminal account value. We are talking about losing a third, in some cases closer to 40%. Think about what that means. You contributed faithfully for decades. You did everything right, and you retired with 60 cents of every dollar you earned, instead of the 92 cents you would have had with a low-cost alternative. The other 38 cents? Paid legally, over decades, in fractions of a percent per year, to people you never hired. Sandra doesn't know this yet. That's not a criticism. That's an indictment of a system that made knowing unnecessarily difficult. All right, you've seen the mechanism. You've seen the math. Let's talk about what changes the outcome. 3 steps, concrete, in order. Step 1. Find out what you're actually paying right now. FeeX and Brightscope are 2 tools that let you enter your current fund names and see a projection of what those fees cost you over time, in actual dollar amounts, not percentages, not a general warning, a number. Your number, based on your balance, your current contribution rate, and your fund choices. The 20-year projection will feel uncomfortable. That's the point. Discomfort is information. Run your current holdings through one of those tools. Look at the 20-year dollar figure. Write it down on paper, not a note on your phone, paper. Let it sit in front of you, because you cannot make an informed decision about something you've never measured. And most people have never measured this. Not because they're careless, because nobody handed them the ruler. Step 2. Find the low-cost option inside your existing plan. Here's something most people don't realize. Almost every 401k menu, even those stacked with expensive managed funds, includes at least one low-cost index option. It is almost never the default. It is almost never on the first screen. It is usually toward the bottom of a drop-down list that most people close after finding the fund with the most recognizable name. Look for funds with the words index, total market, or institutional in the name. Look for target date funds from large passive providers. Then, look at the expense ratio column. If you see a number below 0.1%, that is almost certainly the most cost-efficient vehicle available to you inside that plan. You are not getting a personalized investment strategy from a 1.5% managed fund. You are getting exposure to the same underlying market you could access for a fraction of the cost. The active manager isn't earning that fee gap in aggregate outcomes. The data on active fund underperformance over long periods is, at this point, extensive, consistent, and largely ignored by the people who benefit from you ignoring it. Step 3. Know when the plan isn't enough. If your employer's plan genuinely offers nothing with an expense ratio below 0.5%, you have a decision to think through. Contributing enough to capture your full employer match is almost always worth doing, even in a high-cost plan. Because an employer match represents an immediate return on that dollar that typically outweighs the fee drag in the near term. A 50-cent match on every dollar is a 50% immediate return. No fund, high cost or low cost, delivers that on day one. But beyond the match, the math may favor directing additional contributions into an individual retirement account, where you control the fund selection entirely and have access to institutional class index funds without restriction. An IRA won't give you the employer match. It will give you something equally valuable: a menu with no revenue-sharing agreements attached to it. This isn't about walking away from your 401k. It's about understanding where each marginal dollar of your retirement contribution works hardest. Capture the match, then evaluate every additional dollar on its own terms. Let's close the loop. I opened with 2 people. Same income, same discipline, $180,000 apart at retirement, with no difference in behavior, no difference in effort, no difference in market conditions. The only variable was a decimal. A fee buried in a document written in financial legalese on a fund chosen by an employer whose incentives were not perfectly aligned with yours. Placed at the top of a menu by an administrator whose business model benefits from your inertia. None of that is your fault, and none of it has to continue unchallenged. The person who built this system was counting on something very specific: that you would feel good about saving, that the growing number on your screen would satisfy your curiosity, and that you would never dig one level deeper to ask what that number would look like if it hadn't been quietly trimmed year after year since the week you were hired. You've now dug that level deeper. Tonight, one thing: open your 401k account, find the fund names, search each one with the words expense ratio after it. Write the number down on paper. That's the whole homework assignment. Just look. Because the people who built these systems are counting on the fact that you won't. Leave your number in the comments. What's the expense ratio on your largest holding in your current plan? I want to see what's actually out there, across real plans, at real companies, right now. My suspicion is that most of you will find something that surprises you, and a few of you will find something that genuinely shocks you. The math isn't complicated. The numbers aren't hard to find once you know to look for them. What's complicated is that nobody sat you down at 25 and explained that the difference between a comfortable retirement and an anxious one might come down to a number printed in a font size designed not to be noticed. Now you know. What you do with it is entirely your business. My attorney has reviewed this script. He circled 2 sentences, billed me for 90 minutes, and reminded me that nothing here constitutes professional financial advice. My attorney is also, for the record, aggressively on track for retirement. I'll let that speak for itself.